No matter where the summer takes you, you can take us along for the ride with the iHeartRadio app on your phone or online at 55krc.com.
.505 55 KRC, the talk station. Happy Wednesday. Hump day. Judge Ed Napolitano Day.
Idiots doing idiot things because they're idiots.
Oh, let me guess. For Pac-Man Jones, Joe? Among other things. He's like, there's a huge list that can apply to. Thank you. Brian Thomas here. Joe Strecker in there. He's my executive producer, making me laugh. And a phone number here in case you want to make a call. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe get thoughts or impressions on everything that's going on out there in the world. We'll get to the top trending stories here in momentarily. It's 749-5500, pound 550 if you have an AT&T phone, or 800-823-TALK. Over the blog page, 55krc.com. Wow. What are those things called? Jumpers, Joe? Rompers. I didn't know what a romper was. It's an item of clothing. It is a one-piece shorts and short-sleeve shirt combo. You know, you put them on like little kids. You slide your body right on in and zip it right up the front. Well, this apparently is a new fashion thing, which reminds me painfully of the leisure suit back in the 70s. It's on some levels worse than the leisure suit. Anyway, you got to see it to believe it. Well, it's in the stack of stupid. We might get to that, but these are a thing now, a fashion thing. I can only pray that this is some kind of joke. I do not want to be out in public walking around seeing people wearing these. Guys, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. Moving on. That's 55krc.com. Coming on the 55KRC Morning Show, Alex Trantafilo will be speaking about his favorite subject, and that's, of course, local Republican elections. You got Amy Murray, Jeff Pastor. He wants to let you know about a little bit some judges and, of course, some mayor's race we may get to, though that seems to be a foregone conclusion that John Cranley is going to be the only guy that Trantafilo is going to push for, not that the Republican Party is going to back him. But given who you got your choices, Yvette Simpson or John Cranley, I think we all know that we definitely need John Cranley back and not Yvette Simpson. It'd be like me voting for Trump because I don't want Hillary Clinton to be elected. Now, I can't vote in the mayor's race because I'm not a resident of the city of Cincinnati. I probably would be more keen on voting for Cranley over Simpson just because I think he's a better guy and's got better ideas. Trump, that was kind of a crapshoot. We're living that reality here. We'll definitely get to that because number one with a bullet deals with the the Russian intel leak. But I think the number two trending story is far more interesting. So wait a moment for that. Kevin Flynn's going to join us today. He is a councilman, as you all know. He wants to talk about the city budget. I had City Manager Harry Black on yesterday talking about that, and he's got a really matter of fact about it. This is the way it is. Oh, and you people who might vote for Yvette Simpson for the streetcar, there's no money in next year's budget either. It was a squeaker this year, a big squeaker, and next year they're already projecting about a $19 million shortfall. So I don't know where your streetcar money is going to come from. And remember, in this budget for the city of Cincinnati, City Manager Black's already proposing an increase in the parking fees. There's only so much money you can exact out of somebody to park on the street in downtown Cincinnati, but they'll finally just say, you know what, the hell with it. I'm going to go out to Anderson. I'm going to go up to Kenwood. I'm going to go any place else where there's abundance of free parking. No traffic, no hassles, no streetcar getting in the way, no obligations to watch where you're parking because the streetcar might get impeded. You get all the idea. Anyhow. So little monkey wrench thrown into the whole concept of Yvette Simpson as mayor. Kevin Flynn on that at 8:05, followed by, of course, Judge Anna Napolitano at 8:30. Looking forward to talking to the judge. And the judge, of course, wants to talk about Trump and the Russian intel leak. But while that may be trending, number one, the Russian intel leak, let us move to number two, shall we? I thought this was rather interesting. Rod Wheeler, you may have heard of him by now. He's a retired Washington homicide detective. He was a detective. He's a Fox News contributor. He's been investigating the death of Rich. You remember him? Seth Rich. Seth Rich died under rather mysterious circumstances. And the police are of the mind that it was a botched robbery attempt. He was shot twice in the back in Washington, D.C. Twice in the back, and yet all of his valuables were left on him. All of them. They have no suspects. All along on this whole thing, how is it that the police can conclude and continue to say, without any suspects and with a dead person whose valuables are still on him, that it was a botched robbery attempt? How does one draw that conclusion? Are they aware of all the involvement of Seth Rich's life? Do they know was there any motive in the background of his doings and his workings with the DNC? Did he make enemies? Maybe it was an ex-girlfriend. What do we know? We know nothing. All we know is the police concluded it was a botched robbery. The investigation apparently is ongoing. But what we found out the other day is that he had sent a whole lot of emails to WikiLeaks. Remember, he is with the DNC. An appearance on Fox News, Hannity Wheeler, this investigator, said federal investigation that was involved on the inside of the case saw Rich's computer and case file. Said they came across as very credible. When you look at that and the totality of everything else that I found, this Wheeler guy is talking to Hannity, it's very consistent for a person with my experience to begin to think, well, perhaps there were some email communications between Seth and WikiLeaks. And in fact, as we learned, there were. FBI report, forensic report on Rich's computer generated within 3 days of his murder showed that he made contact with WikiLeaks through Gavin McFadden, or Fadian, now deceased. Isn't it funny how everybody's dead? Now deceased American investigative reporter, documentary filmmaker, and director of WikiLeaks, who was living in London at the time. Federal investigator told Fox News, confirming the McFadden connection. He said, I have seen and read the emails between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. Quote, revelation consistent with findings of Wheeler, whose private investigation firm was hired by a third party on behalf of Seth Rich's family to probe the case. Now, you'll hear Seth Rich's family kind of backpedal on this. They're complaining that he released this information without permission. According to the contract, apparently, this guy signed with the Wheeler or the Seth Rich family. He wasn't supposed to release any of the information, so there seems to be some sort of contractual argument that the information shouldn't come out. But the family also sensitive that young Seth Wheeler was actually working with WikiLeaks and revealing DNC information to them, but that was his choice in his life. So they may be sensitive to that, and the DNC may be upset about it, but apparently is true. And what does that leave us with? Federal investigator who requested anonymity said 44,053 emails, along with 17,000-plus attachments between DNC committee leaders between 2015 and 2016 were transferred from Seth Rich to this WikiLeaks guy, McFadden, before May 21st. Just 12 days after Seth Rich was gunned down, WikiLeaks published the internal DNC materials. Also found it rather interesting that Julian Assange, who is the queen of the WikiLeaks department, offers a reward. He established a $20,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of the murder of DCNC staffer Seth Rich. Question. Now, look, they have no motive. They have no suspects. They think it's a botched robbery. So let's step back from this. We now have a potential motive. He's sabotaging the DNC. He's collecting their information. He's passing it along to WikiLeaks with the obvious expectation that it's going to be released. There's motivation enough, right? Oh, who would kill over politics? Well, funny, you might ask that, not that you necessarily did. I'm standing here at this article, and I don't know how credible it is, but all the people are, in fact, dead. It's an article captioned, The 47 Clinton Friends Who Mysteriously Turned Up Dead. And it's pretty, it's sad, pathetic. It's crazy because you think about, like, Vladimir Putin, we know he goes around and murders people, right? Puts radioactive material in their tea, like reporters and things of that nature. Well, apparently it's going on here, too. And this article is just funny. When you think about it, James McDougal, remember him? Vince Foster, remember him? May not remember Ron Brown, Secretary of Commerce under Clinton. He died mysteriously. On and on and on. And all these people who had intimate, close ties with the Clintons turned up dead. There have been a lot of people I have known in my life, relatives and sort of friends once or twice removed who've passed away, but we had no business connections. We had no relationship. We had no political connections. Nobody worked on. It's just strange that all of these people with very intimate business connections with the Clintons, people with a lot of information about the Clintons who'd worked with the Clintons all these years, turn up dead under really weird circumstances. Anyhow, motivation. What is the motive? And you may have found it here. So, and the DNC has already issued statements and operatives and talking points. Basically, don't comment about it. And even if there is evidence that Seth Rich actually sent emails to WikiLeaks, they're saying, Donna Brazile and others with the DNC, they're saying, well, ignore it. You know why? Because they could be fake. Could be. You think they'd ever give Donald Trump that much sort of leeway on what's real and what's fake? No. Don't go attacking somebody. These may be fake emails. You're right. 516-55 KRCD talk station. Boy, Pac-Man Jones is a jerk, isn't he? That goes without saying. You know what's awesome? Cervati pastry shops. You walk into Cervati pastry shops, it's one of those, oh my, the smell is just uplifting. It's 521, 55 KRCD talk station, and a very happy Wednesday to you. Yeah. Poor Seth Rich, gunned down. And they're looking for motive, and apparently they've found a motive. I got Jason on the phone. Jason, one moment. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, 800-823-TALK. New revelations consistent with the findings of Rod Wheeler, former DNC homicide detective. He was on Fox News. He said, my investigation up to this point shows there was some degree of email exchange between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. I do believe the answer to who murdered Seth Rich sits on his computer on a shelf at the D.C. police or FBI headquarters. So my investigation shows someone within the D.C. government, Democratic National Committee or Clinton team, is blocking the murder investigation from going forward. That is unfortunate, he said. Seth Rich's murder is unsolved as a result of that. So the botched robbery theory, which police have pursued for nearly a year, isn't panning out. Two assailants caught in a grainy videotape from a camera posted outside a grocery mart shot Rich twice in his back, but did not take his wallet, cell phone, keys, watch, or necklace that was worth about $2,000. Botched robbery attempt. They didn't even make an effort to rob him. They shot him in the back and took off. Hey, Jason, welcome to the morning show and a very happy Wednesday to you.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm well. I hope you can say the same.
I can't complain. So I'd like you to divorce yourselves from the particulars of this.
Sure.
And instead look at this a little bit clinically and add a couple other facts in. So what we've got is we've got somebody who apparently, it would have the appearance, leaked facts, a whistleblower, if you will, who leaked facts and then it was ostensibly off. In the same window of time, you've got a Democratic Party that actually goes and apparently basically tries to fix the election. There's no better way to put it. So you're trying to set up the election to go in a certain direction. If people don't go with that, they lose their lives. That's not all that dissimilar than what Kim Jong-un's doing over in North Korea. I mean, if you really look at the facts, yeah. It's funny and laughable, but then again, if you really get down to it, how different is that?
I'm
with you. What
does that
say about where we are?
Jason, that's why it's tough for me, especially with that article that I mentioned earlier that's captioned, The 47 Clinton Friends Who Mysteriously Turned Up Dead, Part 1. There are two parts to this article. I laugh at it because there are really dead people out there. And see, I'm reluctant to make the leap and say the Clintons killed them, because I don't have any specifics on that. And apparently law enforcement hasn't investigated enough or have given up and can't prove a connection. But there's so many dead bodies around. It's hard not to laugh. But I understand where you're coming from, Jason. It's also extraordinarily scary Because if there was some grain of truth to this, and again, I don't know, I just see it for what it is, then, pretty much anybody's in trouble or should be worried to some degree. You know what I mean? I see these social, and we're going to get to this, Democrats are launching their resistance summer. You're going to see a lot more of this. The attacks on public officials out in public, there's no sense of decorum anymore. There's no sense of civility anymore. They are egging on and encouraging the left to go on offensive and attack these folks in their neighborhoods, by their homes, wherever they work, in public, while they're dining. It's an evil, evil attack. It's a public attack, and it's a shaming attack. This is what they want to do, public shaming. And it's just one sort of tactic and tool that the left is using. I haven't seen it much on the right. Maybe the right needs to step up to the plate on that one. But it's that mean, evil tactic, and this just seems like it very well could be that taken to the next extreme. You know what? This guy's got so much on us. He's got so much by way of material information, or we're going to send a message out to anybody else who might do this to us that your days are numbered. It'd be a bad idea if you start releasing DNC documents to WikiLeaks. Look what happened to Seth. I don't know. It is frightening, but also really comical. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate your call, man. 525, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Coming up, we'll hit the local store. Almost tried to introduce Chuck there. That's the next segment. Get a weather report after that. Turn a stack of stupid, actually, as we head on into that. In the meantime, phone number 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, 800-823-TALK. Do have local stories here. And Adam Pac-Man Jones pleaded guilty yesterday to obstructing police during an altercation earlier in January at a downtown hotel. He's not going to be serving any jail time. Judge Dwayne Mallory dismissed the misdemeanor counts of assault and disorderly conduct at the prosecutor's request, then sentenced Bengals cornerback to 2 days. He'd already served in jail on the misdemeanor charges. The sentence includes no probation. Case closed. According to one of the guests we'll have in the program today, Alex Trantafila, who wants to come on and talk politics. You think he'll want to talk about representing Pac-Man Jones? What a wonderful experience that was. I presume he's a paying client anyway. At least he's got a source of revenue. Pretty decent one. Well, for a while. Cincinnati Police Department sent out previously unreleased video yesterday showing Jones' arrest. He was seen cursing at officers, calling for his friends to record the video, and at one point calling for officers to call the police chief. Class act. What a class act. Sergeant Jared Cotton read his Miranda rights. Jones says he didn't assault anyone. Cotton said that he needed to search Jones, to which Jones said, "I'm Pac-Man Jones, N-word. What the F word I got on me," close quote. Joe Strecker suggested that sentence was a product of his, you said English degree from which university, Joe? West Virginia. Anyhow, he did say at one point he wanted to spit on police officers, and he would if he could. Guess he didn't have any spit in his mouth. You know when your mouth is getting dry? You're pretty high. No spit. Can't get it spit. In March, Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Dieters dismissed the felony charges about Jones trying to spit on a jail nurse. Reached by the Inquirer regarding the plea agreement, NFL spokesman said, "Well, we have been monitoring developments in the matter, which continues to be reviewed under the personal conduct policy." How long does that review take? I asked rhetorically. Anyway, spokesman added they have no timetable for any potential discipline. And I just have to note, the justice system is ill-equipped to deal with this kind of thing. Pac-Man Jones got the same treatment you and I probably would. There's no room at the inn. He did serve 2 days in jail. And, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, given the level of crime that goes on in downtown Cincinnati, probably you or I did the same thing. We'd be treated in the same way. We'd be processed through. They'd let us out. They wouldn't give us jail time. They probably would put us on probation. I don't know if Dieters would dismiss some of the other charges against you or I, but suffice it to say there's no room at the inn. So if you're looking for any justice in this, look to the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals, and their disciplinary policies. I know he's been suspended for 25 or so games. We're not exactly getting a great bang for our buck with that guy as far as I'm concerned. Anyhow, over to other local matters. Let's see. One Ohio man facing drug charges after Ohio State Highway Patrol troopers seized 71 pounds of weed, 26 pounds of solid hashish, and 8 pounds of liquid hash oil valued at approximately $947 billion. No, I'm kidding. $1.06 million, that's what they say. Happened at a traffic stop in Summit County. Troopers stopped a 2014 Chrysler 300 with Ohio registration for a marked lanes violation. Police dog alerted the officers. The vehicle then police began to search it. The driver, Pierce J. Roberts, 30, of Ottaway Hills, arrested and booked in the Summit County Jail charged with possession and trafficking of marijuana, hashish, and liquid hashish, all second-degree felonies. If convicted, he could face up to 48 years in prison and up to $90,000 in fine. Too bad he didn't wait till it was completely legal and all the regs were instated here. One step behind the future. Norwood man's accused of putting a Hamilton County deputy in a chokehold has been charged with attempted murder. Jeffrey L. Cooper, 29, also facing felonious assault and aggravated robbery charges. This according to Prosecutor Joe Dieter's announcement yesterday. Investigators said Cooper attacked Deputy Michael Schneider during a domestic dispute at the Days Inn on Ridge Road. The Sheriff's Department told us about this. Man, this was a bad one. Cooper was arguing with a woman and taking her phone. Dieter said in a release, Cooper was able to place the deputy in a chokehold and throw him to the ground. Deputy Schneider was unconscious for some period of time. I've heard it was described as a sleeper hold. You know, the wrestling pose, like an MMA fighter kind of maneuver. Dieter said another deputy was forced to taser Cooper. Schneider hospitalized for 3 days after the attack. Dieter said Deputy Schneider's lucky to be alive. Without warning, Cooper attacked the deputy. He was able to get the deputy in a chokehold and almost killed him. Yet another reminder of the dangerous situation our first responders face every time they respond to a call. Cooper now facing more than 33 years in prison if he's convicted. I'm guessing he's going to be convicted. They have video going on 536 55 KRC, the talk station. Let's get to the stack of stupid or more phone calls if you care. 749-5500, 800-823-TALK. It's Wednesday, which means Terry's Turf Club is open. Terry's Turf Club open Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to midnight. And that is a good thing because Terry's Turf Club probably has the best burger you're ever going to eat. I know burgers is a subjective thing. In the world of burgers, you know, there are like the fast food kind of burgers, which can be good under certain circumstances, but then there's the handmade gourmet burger that you get at Terry's Turf Club. Oh, fresh Angus chuck beef. It's a biggie, too, and with that, you can get any kind of toppings you want, amazing array of toppings, and some very unique toppings as well. The sauces made at Terry's Turf Club every day using only fresh herbs, and all the food's fresh at Terry's every single day. Their tempura battered onion rings, best in the city. Handmade there with their own beer batter that's made, or tempura batter that's made multiple times during the day, ensuring freshness. You don't want a hamburger with one of those awesome toppings? How about fish? They have any number of different fishes. They grill right up and serve it burger style. One of my favorite places around, if for no other reason, the food, but also the environment. Casual and kitschy and awesome. It's casual and you'll love it. 4618 Eastern Avenue down by the Lunken Airport. It's Terry's Turf Club. It's 541 at 55 KRC, the talk station. We'll stay to love and trust. Thank you, Joe. 749-5500, pound 550, AT&T phone, or 800-823-TALK. Got Mike on the phone with a comment real quick. I saw this story in passing. I just wanted to get it out there. It's not really a stack of stupid story, but it's one of the reasons why I don't really support the death penalty anymore. A man was just released from prison after being exonerated for a rape that led him to spending 25 years behind bars. His name's William Barnhouse. He's mentally disabled, and he was falsely convicted. He said after he was exonerated, it was rough. I was always innocent. I'm glad it's finally over. I feel so happy. Happened in 1992. Rape victim falsely identified him as the assailant. Courts moved quickly to convict him on shaky evidence of some hair sample, but he ended up in contact with the Innocence Project, and I like those folks. They try to exonerate innocent people for crimes they didn't commit, and they've had some great success, and success at getting people off death row. DNA testing initiated by the group, along with the Indiana University McKinney, found that Barnhouse could not have been the source of sperm samples recovered from the victim. And his conviction ultimately overturned March 8th. His indictment dismissed, and he can now move on with his life as a free man. Can you imagine if he was on death row, or that if the Innocent Project wasn't around, rotting away in prison for a crime he didn't commit? I just think that is absolutely the worst thing that can happen to a human being. Mike, thanks for calling. Welcome to the morning show.
I heard your interview yesterday with the city manager and with Kevin Flynn coming up today. One thing you never really hear discussed about 4 years ago, when the casino opened, basically this was a parking lot prior to that. We got almost 1,400 employees paying city taxes, as well as millions from our casino, and the other three sending that money to Columbus, which is deviated amongst the other 88 counties. But I thought preferential funds were supposed to go back to the cities that have the casinos. Has that money just been swallowed up by the operating budget, or is it
Mike,
back for a tax deal, or what?
Mike, I can only speculate at this point. I would guess yes, but it's an excellent question because you're right. Nobody ever hears anything about the casino money. You hear about, their gross revenues or their gross take, and, it's up, it's down, it's not as much as they expected, it's better than Columbus, but worse than Cleveland, whatever, but you never hear what the slice of the pie is for the city of Cincinnati. So what I did, Mike, excellent question. Under Kevin Flynn, my topics for him today, I wrote down casino money ? So maybe we'll have time to see if there is any casino money, if in fact coming in, where it's being spent. Maybe it's running the streetcar, Mike. Maybe. Thanks for calling, man. Anyhow, what do we have here? Over in the stack of stupid. Let's check it out. The romper. I'm telling you, folks, go to my blog page, 55krc.com, a fashion faux pas. Don't do it. Don't do it. And they're claiming it's the next big thing in fashion. They're not calling it a romper, though. It's a romp him. It is a one-piece shorts and short-sleeve shirt thing. It's kind of like your children with the pajamas with feet in them. It's all one thing. It's what you would put your baby in. Just slide them right in that sack and zip it on up. And they're in all kinds of fun pastel-y colors and everything. Go look at my blog page, 55krc.com. Just don't do it. How many people bought leisure suits that were around in the 70s and look back with absolute horror at the old photographs? Newtown woman, this is in Massachusetts. Newtown woman facing several charges after authorities say she drove drunk and crashed. There's a little extra fun fact in here. She had a bearded dragon lizard stuffed in her bra at the time. Officers a bearded dragon stuffed in her bra?
Phrasing.
Responded about 1:30 to the Staple Street area, found a vehicle had crashed into a tree in the front lawn. Authorities say the crash flattened all four of the car's tires, set off all the airbags, and knocked off both bumpers. That's a crash. Amy Rabella McCarthy, 39, slurring her words, laughing and drooling when officers found her leaning up against the wrecked Mercedes. Authorities say the passenger in the car, 22-year-old Marvin Keawayaenga. I'm sorry, Marvin. It's your last name, and I can't pronounce it. Under the influence of liquor, found with an airsoft replica handgun tucked in his waistband. Prior to taking the two individuals for booking, authorities say McCarthy told officers that she had a lizard stuffed in her bra. That reptile turned over to animal control. She's been charged with operating under the influence. Among other violations, Keawayaenga was placed in protective custody. 546, 55 KRC Talk Stations. Is that a bearded lizard? Going on 551, 55 KRC Talk Station. Great show lined up today. Looking forward to 7:30 with Alex Trantafilo. Counsel to the stars, including Pac-Man Jones. He doesn't have to call on. He's not going to be talking about Pac-Man, his favorite client. He'll be talking about his favorite subject. That would be, of course, the upcoming elections. We've got city council elections, judges, the mayor, and it's all extraordinarily important. We're trying to maintain some sense of fiscal responsibility and sanity in this county and the city. And, of course, Alex can help do that by promoting some of these candidates. We'll do that at 7:30. Kevin Flynn, Cincinnati Councilman Kevin Flynn comes on at 8:05 and talking about the city budget. And, Kevin, in spite of his vote on the streetcar, which I will forever hold him accountable, has been, I think, a very good councilman overall, at least in terms of fiscal issues, logic, common sense, reason. Again, I can't forgive him for his streetcar vote, but he's done the best possible job of making up for that since he was elected. So Councilman Flynn on that later this morning. Of course, Judge Anna Napolitano at 8:30. I'm going to go to the phones right now. Dave's on the phone with a comment. Dave, happy Wednesday to you.
Yeah, happy Wednesday to you, too. Lois Lerner expressed some fear about testifying about her role in the IRS scandals, some fear of retaliation.
Yes, in fact, her lawyers argued in court that we should not, you and I, the general public, shouldn't be able to see the deposition transcripts because it might end up causing her grievous bodily harm.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Brian, I think it's a play for sympathy, but the truth is, when it comes to physical retaliation, she has a lot more to fear from her own party than she does from her
Well,
party.
yeah.
Do you think George Soros wouldn't pay to have her whacked out if he thought she was going to say too much?
Trust me, I hear where you're coming from. I do. This whole Seth Rich thing and the WikiLeaks, and then you got all these, well, the rumors around the Clintons and everybody that dropping dead around them have been swirling for years. And again, I go back to that article that I found yesterday. It's like the 47 people that have close to the Clintons that have mysteriously died. So, yeah, you may be right. More to fear from her own party than the Republicans and those evil Tea Partiers. And again, I keep going back to what evil Tea Partier you know, what conservative, what organization or group actually would go after Lois Lerner in a violent fashion for something that she said in a deposition transcript. Wow. I think, Dave, you are on to something. Definitely. Anyhow, over to the stack of stupid. According to the Austin American-Statesman, that's a paper, 37-year-old Brandon Vesmar, he's from Austin, Texas. He's suing a Round Rock woman for texting during their movie date. He described the date as a first date from hell. Told the newspaper his date began texting about 15 minutes into the movie. And according to the petition filed in the small claims court, his date, quote, activated her phone at least 10 to 20 times until at which point he asked her to stop. And we suggested that she go outside to text. The woman left the theater completely and left Mr. Vesmar without a ride home. Said the woman subsequently refused to reimburse him for the movie ticket of $17.31, the price of the ticket to the 3D screening of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I thought that was an outrageous price too, Joe, but hey, it's 3D and it's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Doesn't that command a premium? Yeah, I wouldn't pay it either. Anyhow, he said his petition described her behavior as a threat to civilized society. I think I'm willing to go with him on that. Texting. What a colossal pain in the keister. I don't know what you are on texting, but if the text involves more than a quick, short response, if it involves some sort of discussion, point, counterpoint, if it involves some sort of having to respond with a variety of details as to why the text that you received is either wrong, inaccurate, listen, pick up the phone and make a call. And, of course, if you're supposed to be on a date watching a movie, I think your date might appreciate a little more attention, his or her direction, than whoever it is you think it's so important to text to during that event. It's a first date. Well, maybe he didn't make a very good impression on her when she picked him up, too. There's always that possibility. Coming up, more nationally trending, locally trending. We got more on Donald Trump and the reaction from the Republicans and why they can be justified in their perhaps concern over Donald Trump and their perhaps caving in on supporting him. You only get thrown under the bus so many times, people start getting a little concerned, and Don has been throwing some people under the bus lately. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, 800-823-TALK. Be back after the top of the hour news.
Get connected.
Get connected to what's trending now. It's just a click away. Get the free iHeartRadio app at 55krc.com.
You see the distant flames, they bellow in the night. You fight in all our names for what we know is right. And when you all get shot and cannot carry on, though you die, la resistance lives on.
There's your Democrat Party right there. La resistance. It's resistance summer here. Aren't you excited about it? It's like the Summer of Love, 1967, before the wheels fell off the whole Summer of Love reality going on in San Francisco. Yeah. Anyhow, happy Wednesday to you folks. My name is Brian Thomas. You got tuned into the 55KRC Morning Show. Appreciate that. The show which would not go without Joe. Joe, the executive producer. His name's Joe Strecker. You want to talk to Joe or me, you can call 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phones or 800-823-TALK. Any of the things that are going on nationally, locally. Let's start with nationally, of course, Russian intel. And didn't really dive onto this because I was more interested in the dead DNC staffer Seth Rich in the last hour. Seth magically died, shot twice in the back in what the D.C. police say is apparent a botched robbery. They have a grainy video of these two guys gunning him down. Oddly enough, didn't bother stealing anything or even attempt to steal anything from the, Seth Rich, who had a lot of valuables on his wallet, $2,000 gold bracelet and other items, not even touched. So how the police arrived at that conclusion has always been sort of a looming question mark. The investigation allegedly still ongoing. And then we have this revelation confirmed by this investigator that the FBI had, in fact, looked at Seth's computer within 96 hours of his murder and confirmed that, yes, he had, in fact, transmitted 44,000-plus documents, along with over 17,000 attachments, to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, who published them 12 days after his murder, along with a $20,000 reward. It's interesting. The D.C. police have also offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to the capture of Seth's murderers. Has anybody seen the reward from the DNC? That's right, there isn't one. Isn't it weird that WikiLeaks would offer one? Has WikiLeaks ever offered reward money for anybody else? Is this what they do? Do they just pick random acts of violence and people that have been murdered? Like, let's say here in Cincinnati, has WikiLeaks offered a reward for the 8-year-old girl that got gunned down in a living room? No. Why would they do it for this guy? Yeah, well, the evidence all starts lining up, and you're all looking for motive here on why Seth would have gotten shot. You might have it. I just got to go back to this article I found yesterday, 47 friends who mysteriously turned up dead, Clinton friends, all the way back to James McDougal, convicted Whitewater partner of the Clintons who died of an apparent heart attack while in solitary confinement, a key witness in the investigation of Ken Special Prosecutor Ken Starr. Vince Foster, remember Vince? Yeah. He died of a gunshot wound to the head, ruled as suicide. He, too, was about to testify against Hillary about records she refused to turn over to Congress. Ron Brown, former Secretary of Commerce under the Clinton, former DNC chair, he died in a plane crash. Pathologist said he had a hole in his head. On Ed Willie. Just one after another. Anyhow, it's not safe to be friends with Clinton. Just statistically, you don't have to say that the Clintons were involved in these nefarious, mysterious murders or I'm sorry, not murders in all cases. Some of them appear to be natural causes or suicide. These deaths. You don't have to assume the Clintons had anything to do with that to recognize that it might be bad for your health to be associated with them on any level whatsoever, because statistically you're far more likely to die. Anyhow, but over to Donald Trump and these leaks and the impact it's having, which is more profound than any actual alleged security breach, like the Russians finding out that the Israelis knew that the ISIS is planting bombs in laptops. And apparently it was. The source of the information was Israel. But there are all kinds of articles out today analyzing this from the damage that Trump is doing by his recklessness as president to the Republicans and those who are trying to support him. Just look at the Journal for this one. Trump's disclosure says sensitive information to the Russians, whatever the particulars, is the danger is that presidencies can withstand only so much turbulence before coming unglued, and one after another, with the Democrats piling on in this summer of resistance. You're going to need a president who's a little more well-oiled when it comes to how to respond and when to say things and when not to say things. Washington Post reported Monday that the Oval Office meeting last week, Trump revealed so-called code word classified material obtained from an ally, which now we find out may be Israel, and he gave it to the Russians. The president went on Twitter on Tuesday to defend himself, saying he had the absolute right to disclose it. That may be true. He decides what's classified or not. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster put a finer point on it at Tuesday's press conference. He didn't deny the key details. He said Trump's disclosure was wholly appropriate and it didn't expose intelligence sources and methods. And it's pointed out that presidents often share secrets with overseas leaders for a variety of reasons. We helped the Russians we even disclosed information to the Soviets during the Cold War. But you have to conclude the benefits of showing what we know will help us diplomatically or strategically. And so for media accounts and tweets, Trump said something about Islamic State's laptop bomb threats to airlines. He may have been trying to convince the envoys there, the Russians, that ISIS poses a menace to Russian lives and foreign policy goals, like the Russian airliner that blew up in the Sinai in 2015. Those are all legitimate reasons. Maybe he's just got a compassion. He doesn't want people to die in airplane bombs. If you have information that the ISIS can effectively put a bomb in a laptop and you can't detect it, isn't that information that a humanitarian might want to provide to really pretty much anybody? Anyhow, that aside, the Post story, the Washington Post story that revealed this, had Trump boasting about how wonderful the U.S. intelligence is and that he was impulsive in trying to prove it. National security officials asked the reporters to withhold specifics about that item in question, this code word classified material, because further disclosure could potentially undermine efforts to counter the threat or perhaps endanger human lives. The reports emerged Tuesday that the ally, of course Israel as I mentioned, the revelation could endanger other intelligence sharing relationships. The point being that if our allies can't trust us with the sensitive information they've provided us, that if he's going to go off half-cock and provide it, they're less likely to do it in the future. Diplomatically, it causes problems that transcend the little bit of information that was actually handed out by Trump, if he did. McMaster said he disputed the premise of the Post story, which was that Trump had done something wrong, but he confirmed that Trump made the decision ad hoc. And again, this is him sort of being Donald Trump. He goes off script, like going away from the monitor. Remember when Barack Obama used to go away from the monitor? He always ended up dropping the ball. Well, this conversation turned ad hoc, and in the context of the conversation, he apparently gave this information out. The problem is that even if the president's conduct was wholly appropriate, the premise is plausible. The portrait of an inexperienced, impulsive chief who might spill secrets to an overseas foe is one that Trump has too often contributed. This is the argument from the Journal and others. They're not the only ones that have concluded this. Political mismanagement also to even have a meeting with the Russians the day after Comey got fired. Everybody was talking about that. It's these little things. Why did he do that? Why is he doing this? Why did he send out his minions to deny something and the next day say, hey, yeah, I did it? And they point out that this kind of thing points out why the president's credibility is important. If people don't believe Trump's words, or more importantly, I think it's because I don't think Trump's necessarily lying, or trust his judgment, they won't be given him the benefit of the doubt in the future or be responsive if he asks for support. So remember last week, the White House spent 2 days attributing Comey's firing to a Justice Department recommendation. What did Trump do? Remember, he had the recommendation from Rosenstein, or whatever the guy's name was, and look here, I relied on this recommendation. And you got the talking heads for the president out there saying that, and then Trump shows up in a TV interview. He said, I would have fired him regardless of the recommendation. Well, why did you have your people out there saying it was based purely upon a recommendation? News broke late yesterday about Mr. Comey's contemporaneous notes about Trump asking him in February to let this go, referring to a probe of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The White House denied that account of the conversation, but that would have been more credible if its previous statements were more reliable. You see, it's the whittling away effect. You can't, he said one thing and came out and said the other, and then he's back doing the other thing, and now he's saying, well, that never happened, and wow, I don't know what to believe anymore. So is he going to tweet tomorrow that, yeah, it actually happened, but that there's nothing wrong with it? Also note that he's considering a White House shakeup, but what good is a White House shakeup doing? What good would it be for him to fire his minions around him if he's not listening to their good counsel? And that is another point that was made by an analyst for Fox News, Eric Erickson. He was writing an op-ed piece. He said, I know one of the sources. Personally knows one of the FBI sources. He said the White House staff are reportedly so fed up with the president that they're leaking information to the press because they feel Trump cares more about headlines than about advice. Erickson wrote, what sets this story apart for me, at least, is that I know one of the sources, and that source is solidly supportive of President Trump, or at least has been, and was during the campaign, but the president will not take any internal criticism, no matter how politely it's given. He does not want advice, cannot be corrected, and is too insecure to see any constructive feedback as anything other than an attack. Honestly, folks, if that's the way he is, that is insecurity. Massive insecurity. Erickson went on to write, he said, so some of the sources are left with no or other option but to go out to the media, leak the story, and hope that the intense blowback gives the president a swift kick in the butt. Perhaps then he'll recognize he's screwed up. The president cares vastly more about what the press says than what his advisor says, and that's the real problem. And one of his advisors are having to go recognize and use, even if it causes messy stories to get outside the White House perimeter. That is a plausible view of things. How come there are so many leaks? Because he's not listening to people inside saying, get the hell off the Twitter feed. Shut the hell up. Let's talk about strategy. It's not ready, fire, aim around here. You're the president of the United States, for God's sake. 617 55 KRCD Talk Station. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone. 800-823-TALK. Bob. Hang in there, Bob. Bob's has some something to say. 622. 55 KRCD Talk Station. 749-5500, pound 550, AT&T phones, or 800-823-TALK. Yeah, back to the commentator Erickson and his conclusions about the damage that Trump may be doing. And again, this is speculation that he got from inside sources that he's good friends with, one of them at least. He said everybody's pulling their hair out. They want Trump to succeed. They're pro-Trump, but he's not listening to them. And so that's where these leaks are coming from, because he's not listening to the advice he's been given. So his point is, you can call these sources disloyal, traitors, or whatever you want. He said, but please ask yourself a question. If the president, through inexperience and ignorance, is jeopardizing our national security and will not take advice or corrective action, what other means are available to get the president to listen and recognize the error of his ways? This is a real problem, and I treat this story very seriously because I know just how credible, competent, and serious, as well as seriously pro-Trump, at least one of the sources is. And that's the conclusion of his commentary. So he, again, makes a valid point. If that is, in fact, what's going on, it would explain a lot, a whole lot. Let's go over to the phones on that point to Doug. Doug, welcome to the morning show, and a very happy Wednesday to you.
Hi, Brian. Hey, I'm still a Trump supporter. Okay, and I think he's going to have to, I don't know, keep playing, keep going with it, because I think the media is out to get him. There's politicians out to get him. They don't want, say, a Brian Thomas or a Doug to come in and be able to be elected president. I really don't think. I think a good old boys club is out to get him. I really do.
Well, no, there is all kinds of that going on, Doug. No doubt about it. I mean, the Democrats have formally launched something they're calling Resistance Summer. And honestly, I mean, their stated goal is to resist President Trump. It isn't resisting specific policies. They haven't even heard what his policies are across the board. They don't even know. It's resisting a man. So, yes, there is a ton of that going on. But step away from that, Doug, and look at this Erickson guy's point, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Oh, I do.
Okay, and that's, Trump supporters and people like me who are just anti-Hillary Clinton and voted for Trump, the pressure is appropriate. It needs to be brought to bear on Donald Trump. He is not helping his or your cause. That's why this kind of thing is good. I think that's Erickson's point. The people are pulling their hair out. They want him to shut the hell up so they can actually get something accomplished. So, yeah.
You're right, but I don't think he's going to – I don't even think it's not only the Democrats. There are Republicans.
Just say the word John McCain. I mean, John Kasich. We could go on all day long. You're right.
I'm with you there.
You know it, man. It's easy to see. You know it's there. But this isn't like, oh, that's the reason. You can't look at this situation and these, we'll call it global demonization of Trump, and say it's all anti-Trump people, like this Erickson guy reporting that there are serious Trump supporters, people that want him to succeed, who have a motivation to leak things like this in order to smack him into reality. And that's a valid point. Something has to be able to accomplish that. And if he really isn't listening to his advisors, and he gets insulted when he's met with any criticism, people like that. They can't handle any constructive criticism, and immediately it's your fault, or they blame someone else, or it's, to hell with you. I don't know if he's really like that, but if he is, this is what is being reported by one of the inside sources, by a Fox News reporter. Let's just take him at his word. If that's the case, then this does make sense. It's not they want to tear him down. It's they're trying to get his act together. There's competing interests here which seem to align to be anti-Trump when there may be more than one motivation going on. 626-55 KRCD Talk Station. Bob and Mike and Malin, you're all up next. 749-5500, 800-823-TALK. First, I got to tell you about text code because it is 6:32. Little Satriani. Dusting off Surfing with the Alien, Joe. Thank you very much. I haven't heard Satriani in years. 749-5500, pound 550, AT&T phone. Let's go over to the phones right now. Let's see what we'll pick one, Joe. Who are we going with first? Mike, welcome to the morning show.
Love this show. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for calling, man. I appreciate the compliment and that you listen.
Hey, couple quick comments, a rhetorical question, and then a question for you. First of all, if I was going to assassinate somebody, I'd damn sure take their wallet, make it look like a robbery.
Valid point.
Another thing is, why should we give a damn about Russian civilian aircraft when they're real good at shooting down civilian aircraft? And plus, they're killing tens of thousands of Syrian civilians.
Well, I threw that out as a possible speculative point, Mike. If we know, and nobody else does, or only a handful of governments know how specifically ISIS can stuff a bomb into a laptop and have it undetected, the mere fact that we know that they can do that is a very important point. I think from purely a humanitarian situation, I mean, even in wars, we take efforts to not kill civilians. I mean, it's just something you try to do. So even though the Russians are bad and evil and they've killed people, and of course we know about their president Putin and his antics going around killing people with radiation and everything, reporters specifically, do you want to hold the potential murder of people? You want to blame, or rather allow potential innocent lives to perish because their leaders happen to be jerks and murderers? I mean, there is a humanitarian element in there that, this information widely disseminated would be good for everybody, maybe to bump up security or prevent laptops from blowing people up on planes, people who don't have any connection to the wars that are being waged by our leaders. I mean, compassion and humanitarian, that's kind of where I'm hoping that there's an element of that in there. Don't know, but it exists. And frankly, we already knew about the laptop bombs. We had already heard that we're banning them. You can't use them on certain flights from certain countries. And it's going to be expanded from what I hear. It's going to cause a lot of problems for business travelers. But, in the interest of safety, I suppose that's what we're supposed to do. We do have the TSA anymore, remember? Thank you, Mike. Good to hear from you. Let's get to Malin. Malin, happy Wednesday.
Good morning. Hey, the only people that I know that aren't listening outside of Mr. Trump is the two political parties. The Democrats have decided to push for communism,
yes,
with the Antifa and beating up Trump supporters and harassing Republican congressmen at their meetings.
Yep.
The Republicans are somnambulists. They're walking through this apparently, and Eric Erickson, he was a never-Trumper from the get-go. If you remember, he rejected Trump at the Red State Convention.
Oh, I know. I am not saying what he said is necessarily factual, but I am saying what he says does make a lot of sense, and it is one more way of viewing what's going on. It's not definitive, not that certain, but it does offer an explanation.
We are being dismantled as a country, and I think those of us that still want a republic and freedom need to recognize this, and neither party.
How about Trump recognizing it? See, this is the point. I think Erickson makes some wonderful points. We all know he is a loose cannon, and a lot of people will defend that by saying, well, isn't that what we wanted? We didn't want someone who was presidential. We didn't want someone from the mainstream. And that's all well and good, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't at least take some sage, sound advice and order his life and his comments a little bit more presidentially. It doesn't mean he has to become something different. He doesn't have to become a rhino.
No, we don't know that he's not listening.
His actions suggest that, Malin. His actions are what is being demonstrated. I can only imagine if someone is working for the Trump administration, they had to have told him to lay off the dang tweets by now, Malin. Wouldn't you have? Huh? Yes, you would have. Be honest. Be honest. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And you can't tell me there's no one around the Trump administration who hasn't said, Don, you're screwing us all over.
My concern is the two parties and where they're headed. I mean, they're open, obvious.
He's not helping is my point, Malin. I hear you, and I don't disagree with you. I think the Republicans are running scared from their own shadows. I think the Democrats are obviously organizing so they can undermine the entire institution. It's what the Marxists and the leftists want. This is where the division comes from. It's all part of it. Fine, accept that as fact. Donald Trump is in a position to alter that reality on some level, and all he has to do is just put his dang phone down for a while and let some order come to his office. order things appropriately. Hold off on quick flip comments until you evaluate them relative to everything else your advisors have said and that you have said. Before you start adding things to legislation the Republicans are still working on, you might want to go behind the scenes and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go out and tell everybody that they're going to be able to keep their doctor and they're going to be able to keep their health care and on and on and on. You know, it's little things like that that undermine the effectiveness of the process of getting something done. You can't deny it. It's going on. We're seeing it real time. And if he doesn't have people around him who are telling him to put the dang tweeter down or his phone down, then he needs new people. 637 55 KRC Talk Station. Bob, I swear I'll get to you. Mike's on the phone as well. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone. First, I want to tell you about Gilkey windows. I love my Gilkey windows, and Gilkey windows are, well, they're nice to own for 642 55 KRC Talk Station. Happy Wednesday. Alex Trantafilo in the next hour. Of course, Judge Ed Napolitano at 8:30. Sandwiched in between, we have Kevin Flynn on the city council budget. I just real quick here before I jump over the phones. Democrats have launched this summer of resistance. Of course, it's against Trump. They had this collective the other day, and they want to come up with a 50-state solution because the Republicans have made so many gains under the Obama administration throughout all the states and local elections. DNC Chairman Tom Perez says, Democratic Party, it's our role to support this activism and energy and convert it into electoral wins up and down the ballot by making sure state parties have the tools and resources they need to succeed. What he doesn't focus on is what they're going to campaign on. Now, Donald Trump did campaign on some things that hit a nerve in middle America, and he is, well, at best of his abilities, I guess, right now, trying to effectuate that, obviously being met with a lot of resistance from even within the Republicans. For example, your wall building and the things. But he had policy points, and he ran on them, and in spite of some issues with Donald Trump, the man, he still won. What do the Democrats have by way of policy points other than demonizing Donald Trump? They don't. They lost on their policy points, didn't they? So they're now scrambling, and even their top leaders are worried about this. They had a meeting the other day, an ideas conference at Center for American Progress, that left wing. So all the would-be presidential contenders, and in addition to demonizing Trump and hitting him about the head and shoulders, they were trying desperately to come up with a platform that you might vote for. I wouldn't hold your breath waiting for it, but we'll see. Mike, welcome to the morning show.
Yeah, two things about the top secret stuff that Trump told the Russians. I mean, if we wouldn't have told them about how they know how to put bombs in laptops, and something happened, a Russian plane got blew up, and it came out later on that we knew about it, they would have been like, oh, why didn't you tell us about this? Yeah,
you know what? You know what it reminded me of, Mike? That's kind of the human compassion element that there is involved in this. It reminded me of the NSA knowing about the Windows, XP problem, and having that in their arsenal of potential exploits and not letting Microsoft know that it existed. You know, it could save a lot of hassle and maybe even save lives. If you know those hackers went into the NHS in England and shut that down, that could have caused lives. They shut down subway systems or at least hacked into that. They could have done a lot of damage with that. Human lives could have been lost. The NSA knows about this hole. The only reason they wouldn't let Microsoft know and have it fixed is because maybe they want to exploit it someday. We've talked about this before. So there are compassionate, humanitarian, important reasons that our intelligence should, in fact, be let out. It's for the benefit of a lot of innocent people in many cases. I'd like to think that may be one of the reasons that he said it. You can discount that and say, Donald Trump doesn't care about human life or whatever, but you know what? It's an important piece of information for the world to know. A laptop could be a bomb. You might want to start looking at them before you let them on airplanes. Thank you, Mike. Bob, I swear you're the first one out of the box. Bob. 649, just shy of 650 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Happy Wednesday. Alex Trantafilo in the next hour at 7:30 talking about some of the local races. He actually represented Pac-Man Jones, who just got sentenced the other day. Won't be spending any more time in jail, won't get probation, but we do know after seeing the video that he's a jerk. Anyhow, over the phones we go. I promised Bob he'd be first out of the box since he held for so long. Bob, thanks for holding. I appreciate you calling me yesterday, give me an update on your condition. Sounds to me like you're going to be out of the hospital pretty soon.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. I kind of forgot what I was going to say this morning.
Oh, come on now. No, you didn't. You got nothing but time on your hands. Bob's laid up in the hospital, waiting for his next PT appointment.
Well, I started walking again. I finally got my
prosthesis to get back on.
That was good news, Bob.
Good news, and I didn't have to have any modifications to do it.
Good.
I tell you, the new place I've got lined up in Norwood, they're going to build me my new leg. It's going to have a microprocessor in it.
And Bob was, and we don't need to go into the gory details, but Bob was explaining that the advances in prosthetics are absolutely mind-blowing. So the sad reality of the wars that are perpetual in this world have resulted in some extraordinary benefits to a whole lot of people in the world of prosthetics. So
quantum leaps.
From very, very bad things can come some good. So we'll look at the positive on that. Bob, what did you call to talk about?
Well, really, my extraction team has been uncovered. There's leaks in Washington, and there's leaks out here where I'm at. And most of my operatives have been pulled in and off the streets. I don't know what happened to them. They've disappeared.
Trump made a tweet about him and told the world that you had an extraction team that was going to come and take you out of the hospital.
That was probably it.
Well, the net effect is you got a better doctor and you got your new prosthetic, and you're up in PT and you'll be out in no time, because the only reason they wouldn't let you out is because you couldn't get your leg back on. Right, Bob?
That's right. That was it.
Progress, my friend. Good hearing from you, Bob. The best of health to you. Got to run because I got Paul on the phone, and I got to be out by 55. Paul, welcome to the morning show, and happy Wednesday.
Hi. It's been a long time since I took con law, but I wasn't aware that when the advisors give the president their opinion, that he's supposed to enact what they say. I thought it was the president who makes.
Oh, you know that's the case, Paul.
Well,
But wait a second. When you know nothing about the decorum, nothing about what your allies have been up to, the long-standing relationships that intelligence and other foreign governments have established, all of this, you come into the presidency with a knowledge base relating to some area. In his case, it's business, it's real estate. He doesn't have the subtle nuances to know about all of the intricate workings behind the scenes. He's not a politician. That's why he was elected. But he's supposed to be a smart businessman. Smart businessmen listen to people who know more about the world than they do, and they take the advice to heart. They don't ignore it.
If I may.
Now, go ahead.
We have more allies now than we had under Barack Obama, and he was supposed to be the greatest politician of our lives.
No.
Everybody just needs to shut up, lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Oh, that's simple advice, Paul. That's going to happen. Everyone's just going to shut up because Paul said so. The mainstream media is not going to dwell any time on this. We're still going to be subjected to ridiculous tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning. They seem to benefit no one. I mean, that's the kind of thing that an advisor, that a person who has a good business acumen, or is at least willing to listen to somebody else rather than only what he says to himself, might take into account. Is, wait a second, you're not helping. That's what our advice is. We want you to succeed, Don, and you're not helping us with our ultimate cause. You're undermining it. You can't do this. That would help. Him listening to that. And yes, the commander-in-chief, under the Constitution, doesn't have to listen to anybody. That doesn't make him a good commander-in-chief. And I would argue that someone like that who refuses to listen, and assuming that's what's going on, again, the predicate for this was an analysis by someone who has a very close friend who's right there in the know. And that person says, geez, I want this guy to succeed. I want him to do the right thing. I want to get our policies advanced. All of this has been distractions, and the mainstream media is not going to let up. They're not going to sit on their hands and be quiet, sit down, shut up, and fall in line. So you've got to do something about them. But Donald Trump's not the one that needs to be responding to every allegation in the press. He has people to do that. Those people need to have coordinated talking points that are followed by who? The president. If he sends people out to speak on his behalf, and he has been, then gosh darn it, he should say things that are consistent with what he sends them out to say. That would be presidential. That would be effective. No, he doesn't have to do that, and pretty clearly he isn't. 655, 55 KRCD Talk Station, 749-5500, pound 550, AT&T, 800-823-TALK. Just shy of 7:06, 55 KRCD Talk Station. It is Wednesday, and a very happy Wednesday to you. Hump Day. And a great day for guests lined up. Thanks to Joe Strecker, my executive producer. Alex Chantafilo in a short half hour, actually less than a half hour from now. We're going to be talking about politics. Well, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get anything out about his representation of Alex Pac-Man Jones. What a wonderful, wonderful human being that guy is. Anyway, we will hear about some of the upcoming elections. Need to hear about Amy Murray, Jeff Pastor, some of the judges' race, and, of course, the mayoral race. And speaking of things in downtown Cincinnati, including Amy Murray, Jeff Pastor, and the mayor's race, Kevin Flynn, Cincinnati councilman, is going to be joining us in an hour. Kevin wants to talk about the budget. His recent op-ed piece about the city manager and secrecy behind the banks. There's a WCPO investigative report on that one. One of the local stories is kind of trending. How come we don't know what's going on in the banks? How many meetings have you heard about that where they have banks meetings, planning meetings, and you're invited to make a say in the discussion points or maybe offer an idea, or if you're a business, like there is one that wants to open a pavilion down there for live shows, they're just being ignored. I know, and look who's on the board, Rob Richardson Jr. How do those people get on that board anyway? Senior. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Yeah, so how do you get on the board? It's an appointed position. Appointed by politicians. There's a sunlight law. You have to have meetings in the open, and you can't avoid those meeting requirements by delegating it to some committee. That would be a very easy way around your right to know what's going on in connection with the sunlight law. So a little bit of shenanigans going on that. Kevin Flynn wants to talk about that and maybe even get to the point of one of the earlier calls. How much money does the city get from the casino anyway? Is that helping at all? And why are we running a budget shortfall when, as the caller earlier pointed out, that wasn't too long ago, that was just an empty parking lot. I used to park there when I worked at the courthouse. Yeah, a really not much revenue-generating place compared to a casino. So was there a huge infusion of cash from the casino at any point since it opened its doors? And if so, where did that money go? Maybe to the streetcar. I don't know. Judge Napolitano at 8:30 on the Trump and Russian intel leak story. And, of course, that's what everybody seems to be wanting to talk about this morning. But first, I want to invite you to lunch. Normally, we have listener lunch today. It would have been today. We're taking a pass today. A bunch of calls on this yesterday. Listen, if we're going to have a listener lunch, it will be on my blog page at 55krc.com. It may only be there the day before, but by Wednesday of listener lunch, it'll definitely be on there. If you don't see anything on my blog page at 55krc.com related to lunch, then we're not having one. And that's, of course, the case today. You see some other funny things on there, but nothing related to lunch. That's because next week, and you're invited here to 8044 Montgomery Road on Tuesday for a pre-Memorial Day lunch. We're going to be saluting the servicemen and women and civil servants, and specifically like police. We've got some great food coming up because you're going to love it. Pit to Plate Barbecue. Those folks rock the barbecue. Mazunte Taqueria is going to be there, so you have your choice between barbecue or tacos, or you can have both. Culligan's going to hand us over to the water. Servati, awesome Servati pastry shops, got some treats to hand out, and Cone Ice Cream. Going to be enjoying that, and that is killer awesome ice cream. So between 11 and 1 next Tuesday, put it on your calendar. Special thanks to Hines Realty for allowing us to use the front parking lot. And things have dramatically improved over the years on our front parking lot. So it used to be a little direct sunlighty, a little hot, warm. It's going to be fun. There's a lot of cover. And, again, it's free lunch, so show up and hang out for as long or as little as you want. Next Tuesday, it'll be on my blog page at 55krc.com. Now, 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phones or 800-823-TALK. Of course, Trump's issues continue. And it was just pointed out in the last hour that, sometimes it may be better if he took some advice from folks and maybe toned his act down a little bit. And it's been suggested that perhaps some of the leaking and some of the frustration that's going on behind the scenes the frustration behind the scenes is resulting in some of the leaks because Trump supporters behind the scenes are really hoping he, kind of becomes more presidential. And we don't need to go revisit that since we just got done talking about it. But that is an element to all of this. And is this all much ado about nothing so far? I would say yes. And I would only, and you've seen this already. Now, remember Barack Obama's 8 years of the presidency? What did we hear over and over and over and over and over and over again? when it came to Barack Obama not being able to fulfill his agenda or the problems that befell Barack Obama, the financial crisis, oh my God, it was George W. Bush, wasn't it? Over and over and over again. If it wasn't for Bush, if it wasn't for Bush, if it wasn't for Bush, Bush did this to Barack Obama. It was Bush's fault. Until we were all blue in the face with that. And now it's funny because in the context of this Russia leak or a lot of other things that are going on, people are obviously wanting to point back to the prior administration since they were as guilty as sin for doing much worse than Donald Trump. And now we're getting this, oh, yeah, well, that's convenient. You just want to look and say, oh, Barack Obama. This is Donald Trump we're talking about right here. What does Barack Obama have to do with this? What does Hillary Clinton have to do with this? Well, it has something to do with it because those two people served to illustrate the disparate treatment by the media. You didn't hear jack squat about the problems that Barack Obama brought about. Remember? Let's see here. Washington Post reported May 25th, 2014, the White House had mistakenly identified the CIA chief in Afghanistan, which, of course, put the CIA chief in Afghanistan's life in danger. A very specific, damaging release of information, no wailing and gnashing of teeth. And you had a June 30th, 2016, the U.S. offering to share Syrian intelligence on terrorists with Russia. That is to say, the Obama administration wants to give or wanted to give or actually gave their intelligence to the Russians. I thought that was verboten. Didn't we? Are we not living in the middle of this wailing, screaming, pulling of hair by the Democrats and even some of the Republicans about him handing over sensitive military secrets to the Russians the other day? Barack Obama's done it. Nobody said anything back then. It's within his prerogative. We're trying to solve the problem in Syria. The 2014 story was from the same Washington Post reporter from the other day article on Donald Trump, the one that started all of this hysteria, momentary hysteria, that really is rather faux, I would argue, faux hysteria. So anyway, Greg Miller wrote the article on Monday, the Washington Post, accusing the Obama administration of releasing sensitive data to the Russians, and he, of course, pretty much gave Barack Obama a pass on sharing Syrian intelligence with the Russians back not too long ago in 2014. Double standard, much? Yes, definitely. And then the other one that everybody's talking about this morning, and it goes to motive, and that is the murder of DNC staffer Seth Rich. And the circumstances around that murder are just really amazing. The guy got shot twice in the back, and the D.C. Police Department was able to conclude by that, a grainy video of the two guys doing it, that it was a botched robbery, and yet he was not robbed at all. No reason for those guys to gun him down and just run away. They could have taken a stab at maybe rifling through his pockets, taken the $2,000 wrist bracelet or whatever he was wearing, or maybe his wallet, but no, they didn't bother with any of that. And yet the D.C. police, I guess, are capable of seeing through things and seeing things that you and I don't. Botched robbery. But as it turns out, a private investigator has determined that we may have something that would result in motive here. Why was he killed? We don't know. Oh, could it be that he sent 44,053 emails along with 17,761 attachments between the DNC leaders, among those DNC leaders, over to WikiLeaks? Yep. That's what he did. Seth Rich sent them to a guy, a WikiLeaks guy named McFadden, who no longer is with us either. I thought that was rather interesting. He's now deceased. He's an American investigative reporter, documentary filmmaker, and director of WikiLeaks. He was living in London and having these communications with Seth, and Seth gave him the documents, and then, oh, lo and behold, he magically dies. Shot in the back, no suspects. Now, it was 12 days later that WikiLeaks released these documents, and you all know what happened afterwards. This is the stuff that resulted in the Bernie Sanders people having a massive hissy fit. These are the documents that confirm the DNC was actively working against one of their own, Bernie Sanders. And I guess these documents are the ones that have served the basis for that lawsuit filed by Democrats in Florida against the DNC. We'll let you know how that one pans out eventually. But I thought it particularly interesting that amid all this, that WikiLeaks offered a $20,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of Seth Rich. And what dog do they have in that fight? Well, he was one of theirs. Of course they would offer it's logical that they might offer a reward for Seth as opposed to anybody else who gets gunned down in the United States of America. They have a connection with him, a connection that was confirmed by an FBI search of his computer within 96 hours of his murder, a connection which confirms that he did, in fact, transfer 44,000-plus documents to WikiLeaks, DNC documents. And that would certainly provide motive for his untimely demise. D.C. police, the District of Columbia police, have also offered a $25,000 reward. Republican lobbyist Jack Berkman has offered a separate $130,000 reward for information. Do you not find the silence deafening from the left? Seth was one of their own. He was the DNC staffer. The DNC hasn't even offered a penny for information leading to the arrest of his murderers, these would-be botched robbers. Dennis is on the phone. You want to hang on, Dennis? Be right with you. Got to tell people about advanced patient imaging. Advanced patient imaging. Just going on 722 right now at 55 KRCD Talk Station. Mere moments away from Alex Trantafilo. Agent to the stars and the thugs, Pac-Man Jones, one of his clients. I know he's probably listening right now. He's very upset that I keep reminding everyone that, hey, you're a lawyer, Alex. You take your clients as you get them. I'm sure you provided wonderful representation. The guy didn't go to jail. He got time served for 2 days. You don't have to be on probation. You think Alex is going to negotiate with the NFL over what potential penalty that Pac-Man Jones might get as a consequence of his thuggish behavior? I don't know. Anyway, Alex wants to talk politics, as he always does, and I'm looking forward to having him at the bottom of the hour to do that. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to having Dennis on the program here. Dennis is on the phone at 749-5500, 800-823-TALK. Dennis, welcome to the morning show, and happy Wednesday to you.
Good morning, sir. Happy Hump Day to you, too.
Thanks, man.
I was very vocal at the time. I didn't hear anyone else. When Osama finally gave the okay to take out bin Laden.
Yeah.
Didn't he get in front of microphones and cameras and bragging about how much intel we collected on those hard drives?
Yeah, and if you recall correctly, I believe the doctor that helped us find Osama bin Laden was kind of hung out to dry. Wasn't he a Pakistani, and the Pakistanis ended up locking him up or something?
Sure did.
Yeah. Well,
and
again,
how many terrorists went deeper underground when they went, oh, heck, they've got more information about us?
Well, and see, that's the argument people are making right now. If you give out intelligence, you run the risk of losing it. You know, it's, okay, how do they figure out that the laptops can be made into bombs? Well, if you're a terrorist and there is a particular cell or person, they've got bomb makers that are experts, and you're in the know, I'm certain this is really high-level science. I mean, how do you stuff a bomb that can bring down an airplane into a laptop that's not going to be detected by the authorities? That's a big question mark. So you've got bomb makers, and they know where they are, and they know who the real important people are that know how to do this or that are working on that technology or have even perfected it. If we know through the Israelis, which is what's being said, then they know that there's someone within that particular cell or working group that is a mole or turncoat, and that's when they go in and start to ferret out and looking for human intelligence sources and kill them. You know, I mean, they're pretty indiscriminate with violence, and I suppose if they have even a sneaking suspicion you're working with the West, not going to take much to convince them to dispatch you forthwith. You know what I mean? So there's the risk that you run. I mean, there's a balance that needs to be struck. And again, I go back to Donald Trump potentially having some humanitarian concerns and letting the Russians know that these laptops exist out there. You and I already knew about it. That's the funnier part about this. I don't know what specific code words were used in this meeting, if at all. But if it involves these laptops, you and I have already had that information that the bulletin went out a month or so ago to the European community and everybody else. We're not going to allow laptops on flights between certain countries. That may be extended now, they're saying. Obviously, there's a severe threat there. And if it's that severe, honestly, I don't care that some intelligence source may be compromised. That is something that I think the world, you and I, need to know so we can factor it into the equation of whether we want to get on a dang airplane or not. Thanks, Dennis. Good to hear from you. Alex Trentafilo coming up next after the Rush Limbaugh Morning Update. And today, liberals are wondering why advertisers and subscribers are leaving their media platforms. Find out from Rush on that next. 7:30, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Very happy Wednesday to you. Big Wednesday coming up top of the hour. We have, of course, Kevin Flynn from Cincinnati City Council about the budget, among other things. And, of course, 1 hour from now, Judge Andrew Napolitano. In between that, or between now and then, we have another judge, former Judge Alex Trentafilo. And he is the head of the Hamilton County Republican Party and wants to talk about how awesome it is to represent Pac-Man Jones. Welcome back, Alex. Good to hear from you.
Brian, good morning. Good to be with you as always.
You did make it in the paper today. I saw your buddy got time served, 2 days, no probation, and we now have a video proving what a jerk he is. I know he's your client. You can't talk about it, Alex, at least not much. I just had to give you a hard time.
Well, I'm fine. I'm getting a hard time from a lot of people, but as I reminded my son last night as he grilled me on this topic, I said, everybody's entitled to a constitutional defense in our democracy and our republic. So that's what we provided. How's that, Brian?
It works. Hey, trust me, I had to stand behind that one a lot of times during all the years I was actively practicing law, and it's just a practical reality, especially when you're doing criminal work. You get some, you take your clients as you get them, but you're right. If you believe in due process, if you believe in justice, then yes, you're entitled to a vigorous advocacy on your behalf. And of course, the prosecutors got all their information. You wouldn't be stuck in front of them if they didn't. So I'm looking forward to the NFL perhaps, or the Cincinnati Bengals meeting out a little bit more appropriate punishment given the abhorrent behavior that he exhibited. That's just what bothers me so much. The idea of degrading our law enforcement officers and mocking them and saying you want to spit on them. I'm sorry, that's conduct that I just cannot forgive or abide. Anyhow, you came to talk politics, and we always do talk politics with Alex Trentafilo. So dive on in, Alex. Which race you want to talk about first? We don't have any Republicans in downtown Cincinnati. Is there any county race you want to focus on off the top of the bat?
Well, certainly there are county races. There are judicial races this year. But what I would talk to you about first is we're going to be unveiling a new city council candidate, and I'm excited to talk about this.
A new one?
Yes, a new one. We've got Amy Murray, who's our rock star leader of our ticket. And then,
right.
Of course, we've got Jeff Pastor, who is out there working really, really hard and meeting voters and spreading the message. And we're going to be rolling out a fellow named Seth Maney, M-A-N-E-Y. Seth Maney will be, I anticipate, being a member, I hope a member, but ultimately a candidate for Cincinnati City Council. You'll hear more about him as the days and weeks unfold, but he is about to launch the campaign, and just a wonderful young guy, 31-year-old business owner, property owner, understands the importance of the free market. As a capitalist, I love guys like this. He is interested in development. He's interested in common sense transportation in the city. And he's conservative, and that's what I love about him. So, we're going to talk more about him, but excited to talk about him this morning and look forward to him meeting all of our Republican faithful and then also kind of spreading his message to the city of Cincinnati.
Well, of course, he's invited to be on the 55 KRC Morning Show. I'm certain Joe will reach out to his people, or his people can feel free to reach out to Joe to set that up. I'm very curious to know what he's all about. Now, obviously, it is a packed field. Alex, if everybody pulled papers to run for council, you're going to have like 50 people to choose from.
Yeah, the last time I looked at the list, there were something like 45 plus people who have talked about it. I'm not entirely sure why one person would want to be on that council.
I know.
Just to be completely candid, given some of the personalities on that council. But God knows we need some new members there. I mean, we need some people with common sense, conservative values who will do the work of the people, right? Not grandstand the way people like Seelbach and others do down there. So, I hope we see a changeover because the city needs it. They've made some terrible choices on the streetcar and other things. So people have a chance to right some of those wrongs in November.
Yeah, speaking of terrible choices, I obviously going to be talking to Kevin Flynn about it. I talked to City Manager Harry Black yesterday about the city's budget. You had any impressions on that before we take a break here for this next segment?
Well, again, there's just nobody other than Amy Murray right now on that council, and even Smitherman a little bit more, but they're as conservative as I am on this budget. I mean, they need to focus on core services and get out of some of the nonsense that they do.
Harry Black said that yesterday. I thought that was an interesting point of agreement. he said, well, our share of income tax has not gone up in 40 years, and yet the amount of services we're offering has gone up. I said, well, maybe it's time to right-size the city government and get people to understand that the city can't be offering all things to all people in spite of what everybody wants because there are budget limitations. And he said, yep, that'd be an idea. Duh.
Yeah, we should rely much more on the private sector to do things like, I'm not even going to tick off a list, but there are lots of things that we ought to be doing, that we are doing as a government that we just don't need. And, that's where, frankly, I know you're a good libertarian. I align oftentimes with libertarians in the sense that we don't need government doing all kinds of things that it currently does for us. We just don't have to have that. And we'd have a streamlined budget and lower taxes and more growth in the city if we did that.
And if you listen, Alex, if someone could make a good argument that government does it better than the private sector, they could even have an argument, but they can't point to success. That's the fundamentally screwed up thing about all of this, government doing this, government doing that. The inefficiencies of government, the overhead, the sloth, the lethargy, the idea that once you have a program in place that's designed to solve a problem, that program will never go away because people will then lose their jobs. It just becomes a constant battle to keep jobs and keep things in place and never any ultimate progress to show for it. I mean, we could go over it, Great Society programs and all these programs. We're going to cure poverty in our lifetime. $15, $20 trillion later, we're status quo. Alex, don't go away because I want to hear about some of these other races, some of the judicial races particularly. We'll continue after this. 7:40 right now, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Brian Thomas here with Alex Trantafilo, head of the Hamilton County Republican Party. And someone just posted, Alex, I saw on Facebook that they said there's no way Jim Kiefer is more conservative than Alex Trantafilo. I'll let you two battle that one out online.
Wait, they're suggesting that he's more conservative than I am?
No, the other way around.
Yeah, it's definitely the other way around.
That's what I thought. Yeah, Kiefer's got a little pink streak running down him someplace in there, I'm certain. Anyhow, I'll let
there's a lot wrong with Jim Kiefer, but let's just leave it there. Let's move on. I'm going to hear about it from that one, Brian. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's good. That's why I brought it up. Anyhow, I'd like to stir the pot a little bit, Alex. Your job's a little too easy some days. All right. You mentioned Amy Murray and Jeff Pastor, two conservatives. You also brought up Seth. Is it Maney? M-A-N-E-Y?
Maney, M-A-N-E-Y.
Maney.
Correct.
So those are names to watch. Of course, Amy's on the program all the time, and she has demonstrated herself to be completely invaluable for Cincinnati City Council. If we lose her, I think you just stick a fork in it, Alex. You just stick a fork in it. She's the smartest woman on council, or smartest person on council. And I just don't know if there's – what would you recommend my listeners do if they're outside of the city, Alex? Because I know a lot of people – take a great interest in the council race that are outside, and rightfully so, because of the influence that their actions have on everybody in the wheel that surrounds it, the whole 275 corridor and outside in Collier County. So what do we do? What do people who don't live in the city do to help?
Well, there are lots of ways to help. You can select one of these candidates, reach out to their campaign and be a part of it. Help them financially, help them with your time, help them by writing letters to the editor, speak out on their on their behalf on social media, all kinds of ways. I mean, if you want to directly help a campaign, you can call our Hamilton County GOP headquarters. We can put you in touch with the campaign managers and the teams of these various candidates. And, campaigns are won essentially, Brian, with money and bodies. It's just that simple. It's the finances, the resources that get your message out, and the volunteers who help you get that message out as well and hit the ground running and turn out the votes. So those are the two big key components to a successful campaign, and anyone who's willing to participate with their time or their treasure, those are the people that can make a difference. And I'll just say, though, as a note, if you're not living in the city and you live in one of these suburban communities in this odd year, 2017, and I mean that numerically,
right,
by the way, not that it's an odd, you'll have a race in your own community. So if you live in Anderson Township, we really want you to reelect Josh Groth and Andrew Pappas. If you live in Green Township, we want you to reelect Triffin Callis and Dave Lindenberg and the rest of our team there. And the reason we talk about that is because we think some of the more livable communities in Hamilton County are governed by Republicans. If you live in the suburbs, you have safe streets and good schools and a good community. We'd like to think that the Republicans who govern your community are part of the reason. So, stay active in your local community as well, so that way we can continue to have a great county. But there's no doubt, Brian, that the city matters a bunch, and that's why we want people like Amy and other candidates to win.
Well, and that your comments there resonate even further in light of the just the recent launching of Resistance Summer, which is the DNC's efforts to try to take back a lot of the seats that went Republican in these local races. You know, that the entire Barack Obama term was, in their view, marred by the reality that the entire country shifted far right in all the states, the governors, local bodies, you know, representatives and state senators and the like. And they're going to be coming back with a vengeance this summer and next leading into 2018. So we need to be prepared for that. And getting people out to vote, I think, is going to be the biggest challenge, Alex, because if you don't have something contentious, you know, like your Green Township race, gee, you know, whoa, what they could run somebody in there, and if people aren't fully aware that some leftist or some oddball is trying to take over and not get up to vote, say, it's a foregone conclusion that our guy's going to win. This is Green Township, for God's sake. It's all conservative over here. You end up losing.
That's exactly right. And, you know, there is always kind of this just a downturn in momentum for the party in power in the White House in these midterms, and we know that. So it is our challenge to keep people interested and engaged, especially at the local level, because, you know, we have made gains as Republicans nationally. You know, statewide, we control every office. So at the end of the day, we've got to stay engaged. We cannot let some of the noise, I mean the absolute noise coming out of D.C. right now, dissuade us from continuing to push forward a conservative agenda. We know it works. If you look at places, again, like Green Township, we know that the conservative agenda by their leadership is working. And it works, frankly, in Butler, Warren, and Claremont counties, all very livable places. Brian, I'm sure where you live, it's a wonderful community. Part of that is because you've got some conservative people there in charge.
Well, and again, I think the expectation of most is that government can't be all things to all people. If you don't have your fiscal house in order, everything else is going to come crashing down, and there have to be ultimately cuts in what you and I would consider core services. I mean, look at the budget for downtown Cincinnati, and they're, you know, going to be a while before they have any more police recruit classes after this next one. And, of course, there's roads and infrastructure things, and something's got to give. There's only so much local governments can do. But the left, the Democrat administrations, as you can see over and over, time and time again across this country, keep promising more and sending their respective municipalities and cities into the fiscal wasteland. Look at Chicago. Look at New York. And yet it's still a winning recipe for them. Alex, I guess running yourself or creating an existential reality for your city or your government is a way to win elections?
Well, you know, Brian, it is, frankly, by the left. I mean, the more they keep handing out, the more people that want to come on board. But one of the main motivators, and I think I've said this on your show before, for me as a Republican, is this question of fiscal responsibility. And it's one, unfortunately, that I think sometimes even Republicans fall short on. And, you know, I'm not one to often criticize my fellow Republicans, but we have to really begin to look in the mirror on these questions of fiscal responsibility. This country has $20 trillion in debt. I think we have a fiscal cliff on the horizon with the growing amount of entitlement spending that we have with baby boomers retiring. This is real. The Bowles-Simpson report, which many people forget, I've read it years ago. I took it to heart. It essentially said we are heading for a crisis. And, you know, I want to see more leaders, especially more Republican leaders, talking about this and telling the American people the truth, because we're going to hand our kids and our grandkids a crisis, one that Greece is experiencing, you know, a place I know and love. But I will tell you that we have to be more serious. And it begins even in your local community. When your bureaucracy and your local government says to you, we want more dollars, ask tough questions as to why before you just say yes. Sometimes those levies are worth passing, and you certainly want cops and fire to be fully supported. But some of these other things, I would look very carefully at it before you start giving more money to the beast.
Amen. Alex Trentfilo, always refreshing candor and logic and reason with you, and that's why we love having you on the program, and that's why you're head of the Hamilton County Republican Party. Good hearing from you. I look forward to having you on a lot between now and this November, and, of course, for all other things politics. We'll have you on for that, too.
Always enjoy it, Brian. Have a great day.
You do the same. 748, 55 KRC Talk Station. Going on 806 at 55 KRCD Talk Station. A very happy Wednesday to you. Come to the bottom of the hour, Judge Anna Napolitano. And yes, Judge Napolitano wants to talk about Trump and the Russian intel leak and the like. In the meantime, been looking forward to this all morning. We are certainly talking a lot about the city of Cincinnati and the budget. City Manager Harry Black was on yesterday talking about his budget. And it is what it is. Gone over to Mayor Cranley. He has a few days more to look at it. Then, of course, it gets, approved or not by Cincinnati City Council. With that, I'm pleased to welcome back Councilman Kevin Flynn. Kevin, good to have you back on the program. And a very happy Wednesday to you, sir.
Good morning, Brian.
Appreciate your general sense of fiscal responsibility. You and I have had our words over the streetcar thing, and I appreciate everything you've done other than the streetcar and you have a general sense of, 2 + 2 = 4. I consider that logical and reasonable. Now, in the middle of a budget where we're $26 million short, City Manager Harry Black has a squeaker budget that he handed out, but it's going to involve some increases in the cost of doing business downtown. Of course, parking goes up, tickets go up, and a variety of other. Are you happy with this? Are the things in it you don't like, or that you plan on suggesting changes? Is this what it is? We're stuck with it, Kevin. What's the story on the budget?
Well, I don't think we're ever stuck with it. I mean, the city manager presents his best guess of what is trying to do the most with what we have. Now the politicians get involved, that's been frustrating to me over the years, Brian. That's no mistake. I've voted against a number of budgets because they just don't. We don't necessarily. We call out and make favorites, and we make winners and losers in the budget.
That is correct. One of the things that I wanted to ask you specifically about in that, you have the Center for Closing the Health Gap, which I guess they do good things, but there was some investigations into the propriety of their spending, and they backed off their request for $5 million. They're going to get $750,000 in the budget. They get money, and I'm sure there are other agencies and entities out there with their hands out who don't get anything. Black's budget includes giving all outside groups like the United Way and others across-the-board 25% cut, yet those groups still get money from the city, and they're outside groups. How do I get in this line, Kevin, would be my natural response. You know what I mean?
Join the Congo line,
yep.
Brian. We're giving out, according to the city manager's budget, $7,300,000 to outside groups. Now, some of that is legitimate. We're giving $265,000 to the 52 neighborhood councils or 48 active neighborhood councils, $129,000 to the business districts. Things like that make sense.
And those aren't very big line items.
Those are not when you're talking about $3,800,000 or $7,300,000. But one of the things that Councilwoman Amy Murray and I worked on over this past year was any funding for any outside group, we had to have a process of vetting what is it going to be spent on, and I don't see that in this budget. Maybe it's there and it just didn't make it into the budget, but I don't see it. And we passed an ordinance 9-0. Everybody agreed this is what should happen, and we did it. Amy and I purposely did it in January outside of budget season so that people wouldn't say, "Oh, well, you're going to try and hit my project, so I'm not going to do it."
Well, and I hear you, Kevin. It's almost like if you have a construction project, there are obligations to do open bidding. You can submit a bid if you want. It's a comparable thing. If there's money to be had and you're handing out cash to different organizations out there, I'd like to think there would be a competitive bidding process or some vetting process, as you're alluding to, that actually exists already. So we'd have a sense of sunlight on the process. So we know it's not some friend of Mayor Mark Mallory who gets a $750,000 check to open a restaurant. We scratch our head over that one. How'd that happen? Where's this sunlight in the process?
Well, and that's, the what they call the City Human Services Fund is administered by United Way. So there is an application process, a review of what they're going to be doing, where it fits in the city priorities, and then they actually have a reporting out saying, if you got money last year, how was that money spent? Did you accomplish the objective outcomes that you were supposed to be achieving? And that's what Amy and I were saying needs to happen with all of these.
Yeah, I would say including the United Way.
Well, you may very well be right.
Well, only because they tend to have a much higher overhead than a lot of charitable organizations out there, Kevin. That's the only reason I say that. Everyone should be that's getting money.
Well, we have a contract with United Way, and United Way, we're not just giving the money to United Way to give to their own groups.
I got you.
They are a contractor that's hired to administer for our groups.
Understood.
And they get like a 10% for that, which is reasonable.
Right.
But there's still, I mean, we do things backwards here, Brian. You mentioned construction projects. If the city's going to do something, it puts out an RFP, a request for proposal, based on specs. They say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Now, you come in and you tell us why we should pick you, why you're the best. Is it because you're the lowest price? Is it because you've got the most experience? Give us the rationale, put in your bid, and we'll make a decision.
And in the private sector, when charities are seeking money from philanthropists, they have to do that job themselves. They need to convince the philanthropists out there, those with the money, that their organization is a worthy one. This is like a typical free market principle. Now, you're just doing this with government money.
Well, we do it backwards. we decide we're going to give this group X number of dollars, $750,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever it might be, and then we enter into a contract 2 months later to say this is what you're going to do with it. Typically, drafted at least in part by the group that's receiving the money.
Right.
They tell us what they're going to do with the money, and you mentioned Center for Closing the Health Gap. The contract is drafted so broadly that really the money could be spent on anything.
Who drafted the contract? Who signed it? And who approved it, Kevin? That's oversight function. Who's doing that?
Yeah. Well, I agree. There hasn't been much.
Well, and therein lies the rub. And I appreciate all your points on this, which is, maybe we just, I think $7.5 million in a $1.1 billion budget is still not a whole lot. I believe it's a matter of principle we're talking about here. So why not? And I would like to think, Kevin, if there's these organizations out there that are providing such wonderful and good for the community, that there are enough philanthropists around. I mean, the Hale Foundation is throwing basically $1 million a year at a streetcar. So there are enough philanthropists around that could close that $7.5 million hole if the city just decided it wasn't going to be handing out money to random organizations to do work. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
I love it. That's a libertarian reality right there. We know that there are people who want that good to be done, and if you take the government component out of it, it gets done more efficiently, and people are forced to actually do good with the dollars that they are given because the philanthropists are much better at riding herd over the money that they give. Kevin, don't go away. I want to find out what happened. You live in Mount Airy, and I saw this article talking about how Mount Airy is, well, it's been suffering over the years, declined more than any. Just shy of 820, 55 KRCD Talk Station. Judge Napolitano at the bottom of the hour. We're talking with Kevin Flynn, Councilman Kevin Flynn. Problems, issues in the city. We talked budget a little bit in the first segment. I did see this WCPO article, and of course you're quoted in it, Kevin, because you live in Mount Airy. And it's a sad thing to see such a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood has apparently deteriorated so much since the 60s and 70s and 90s even. More than 36% of Mount Airy families now live below the poverty line. Unemployment more than doubled between 1980 and 09. 149% rise in unemployment. And some obstacles apparently with dealing with Colerain Avenue because it's is it a state highway or a federal highway?
It's a federal highway. It's US 27.
And that creates an impediment for you to sort of just change things as you see necessary. Like put a stoplight in there, you got to get approval from on high, right?
And it's nearly impossible to do. Yeah.
And that's crazy. I just the idea that a local community can't take some measure of control over the roadway that runs right through the center of it seems a bit preposterous, or that the feds wouldn't want to help you out in that regard, because it's been suggested that people just fly right down Colerain and tear through there at a high rate of speed. And if people were forced to slow down, some of the businesses there might get a little bit of love. You sound skeptical, Kevin.
I'm a little skeptical of that, Brian. I think that there are a lot of good people in Cincinnati that want to do a lot of good things. Look, I grew up in Mount Airy. I still live in Mount Airy. I love Mount Airy. when I grew up in Mount Airy, we had what all the hipsters are talking about with the neighborhood business district. We had a grocery store on the corner.
Yeah.
We had 4 restaurants. We had a bakery. We had a delicatessen. We had 3 banks. We had a dentist's office. We had a pharmacist. We had a hardware store. We had our own post office inside the hardware store.
And one of the nicest parks in the county.
Well, it still is. 1,459 acres still does exist and is nice. But that's our asset. I love living here because, except for when the deer are eating my flowers.
Well, that's everywhere, Kevin. You can't escape that here.
It's a nice neighborhood. But I'll tell you what happened is there were some bad zoning choices back in the 60s and 70s that allowed massive apartment building. Now, these are they were nice apartment buildings when they were built. This is where the young doctors used to live because Pill Hill was only 7 minutes away by car.
Yeah.
And so they could live there as they were coming out of medical school in their residency and early on. They still have some of the best views in the city.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, do you feel like that council's actions in focusing on the OTR corridor to the exclusion of pretty much all the other neighborhoods, or something along those lines, has done a disservice, or is this Mount Airy has basically hobbled itself by prior actions and not having changed things? I guess it offers so much. North Side's making a huge recovery, Kevin. You know that, and it has less. I would argue less to offer, except proximity to downtown, than Mount Airy, as you illustrate. So why is one making a rebound and another not?
Well, I will tell you that again, council politics enters into it, and we picked winners and losers over time. And I purposely, even though I love Mount Airy, have not tried to be Mount Airy's council person. I've tried to be Cincinnati's council person and make decisions that are best for Cincinnati. But you'll see it every year in the capital budget where we'll pick out $2 million will go to this neighborhood, $1 million will go to this neighborhood. And there's not a competitive process relative.
Much in the same way we just talked about with the people with their hands out for city tax dollars.
Yeah.
Except in this case, it's council exclusively, or perhaps the city manager or the mayor, deciding where the priorities go. And there have been a lot of neighborhoods that have been left out. We all know that.
And then even with the competitive process, Brian, you have these different groups within these communities, some of which have 5 or 10 paid staff members, versus a Mount Airy that's been working with volunteers the whole time, or a Mount Washington that works with volunteers the whole time.
Huh?
You can't compete when you've got somebody whose job it is to write grant applications to get money. You can't compete on a level playing field.
Well,
now the city recognizes this. The city manager recognizes this. And in fact, I had a meeting with our community development director yesterday where we're going to start kind of an incubator kind of thing where we're going to bring different communities in to say, this is how the process works. If you want to be competitive, this is what you have to do.
But, this is, I'm sorry we're out of time because Napolitano's coming up next, but that is a refreshing thing, and I hope people listen to the entire segment because this is exactly what we talked about with regard to handing out money. A competitive process that is fair and equitable where people are forced to come and explain exactly how they're going to spend the money and why they deserve it relative to everybody else. If the neighborhoods are competing for finite amounts of cash, the same process makes perfect sense. Kevin, this is one of the reasons why I think you're a very good councilman. Again, except for that dang streetcar vote. Kevin, real quick, I got to invite you. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm going to let you know because you've come to our listener picnics before. We're having one next Tuesday in support of the first responders, our nation's men and women in uniform. It's here at the station, 8044 Montgomery Road, between 11 and 1. Pit to plate barbecue, and we've got some wonderful taquerias and water and everything. So if you can make it, Kevin, I'm just inviting you formally to spread the word.
I I appreciate it. I will do my best. My daughter being a first responder, I will try to drag her along too.
Fantastic. Kevin, thanks again for your time today. I appreciate, I think the wisdom that you offered my listeners. Going on 8:30 at 55 KRC, the talk station. Of course, JudgeNap.com referring to Judge Anna Napolitano every Wednesday at 8:30. The best segment on the 55 KRC morning show in my estimation and my listeners' estimation as well. Welcome back, Judge Napolitano. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, my dear friend. I'm laughing like heck at that character.
He's great.
So charming.
He's great.
So charming.
You know what? And it's charming in person. I swear. Someday, and you always talk about coming in. You're going to do it. You report live or have commentary from the studio here, and Chuck's going to come in.
Do it.
You are going to find him to be.
And I might bring the handsome one that
Hammer.
There you go,
Bill Hammer.
Native
What a
son.
guy! What a guy!
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
As is the case every Wednesday, I have an appointment to talk with you, and lo and behold, we have nothing to talk about again. Judge.
Unbelievable.
All right, we're up to our ears in Donald Trump and allegations of Russians and leaks and hacking and everything else. This leak, it seems to have something to do with the laptops. We had previously been advised the TSA.
Which leak are we talking
I know.
about?
Okay, good
the
point.
The conversation in the Oval Office
Yes.
or the Comey memo?
The which one do you want to talk about first, Judge? It's hard to keep.
Entirely up to you. I think you were going towards the Oval Office.
I was.
Okay.
And these allegations that somehow Trump endangered national security interests or somehow ruined ties with Israel now is apparently the source of the information that he, quote unquote, leaked. Where are we on this? My understanding is legally the president can, quote, leak whatever he chooses to as commander-in-chief.
Well, the president can classify anything and declassify anything. He declassifies in one of two ways: by whispering it in your ear, in which case it is declassified for the listener only, or by formally removing its classification, in which case it becomes public. So in this case, if the report is true, and I think it is, because the White House denials denied certain parts of it, but not the core of it.
Exactly.
I'll get to that in a minute. If the report is true, then the president discussed top secret information with the Russians, one of whom is a known FSB, that's the successor to the KGB, spy. Ambassador Kislyak is well known in the intelligence community as a spy first and an ambassador second. So, did he give secret information about the location of Israeli spies to a Russian spy whose interests are adverse to the Israelis in Syria? Probably yes. The Israelis say this doesn't trouble us. At first, before we knew it was the Israelis, they recoiled and said, we're not going to share intelligence data with you again. Then when they decided, now this is probably not worth disrupting our relationship with the U.S., they're our big brother, they outed themselves as the spies on the ground. So why is this so high-end if all Donald Trump did was reveal the name of a city? Well, because the name of the city shows where the Israeli spies have active human intelligence, meaning somebody in ISIS whom they have bribed to tell them about what ISIS is doing. Now, that person's probably cut into 1,000 pieces or dead or gone by now. But that's why this category of intelligence data called SAP, Select Access Procedure, is the highest category we have because it involves human intelligence. Of the hundreds of thousands of emails on Mrs. Clinton's server, only three were in this category because it is so rare. Now, General McMaster says, well, the president didn't even know that this was SAP. Well, that's a defect in the people that are briefing him.
Yes.
They should tell him that this is the kind of stuff we don't talk about because a person can die. General McMaster says the president did not compromise sources. Probably true because the sources were probably gone by the time the president told the Russians. And General McMaster says the president didn't reveal the location of American military. That's irrelevant. There's no American military in the ISIS area. If there are, that's probably news to the president.
Yeah.
So where does all of this lead us? I don't know where it leads us, to be honest with you, other than a president who should exercise a little bit more self-discipline with this kind of information.
And that's the criticism that I've seen levied from the Journal to all these news sources, is that's the frustration within the Trump administration, is that some of these leaks may be done by internal Trump supporters who are just frustrated that he won't woodshed himself and he won't listen to his advisors when they tell him to keep his mouth shut and not go out on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, that's the way he is.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily defending his behavior, but this type of behavior does have consequences. Now, whether the Washington Post, the New York Times, and his haters in the Congress make a bigger deal out of this than it really is, or whether this is a big deal, only time will tell. Unfortunately, it is followed by what, in my view, is a far, far more serious allegation, which is the attempt to influence the investigation of General Flynn, which the president cannot do. So again, the reports this morning, we don't know how true they are.
Well,
but according to the New York Times, an FBI agent read to a reporter from the Times portions of a memo James Comey either sent to himself or sent to the public integrity section of the FBI, in which he reduced to writing a conversation he had with the president, in which the president asked him to stop the investigation of General Flynn. Now, can the president do that? No, the president cannot. If the president does not want someone investigated for a crime, he has a constitutional tool available to him. It's a drastic tool, but it's available. It's called the pardon power.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly lawful and perfectly constitutional, but interfering with or trying to sidetrack or slow down or delay an investigation, particularly of somebody he hired, particularly if somebody he's about to fire. This conversation occurred the day before General Flynn got fired.
Yeah.
If it was an order, it doesn't sound like it was, but if it was an order, it was unlawful.
Now, is there precedent for that? Unlawful means that it is violation of the law. The law states, blah, 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 you can't do it. Is there a particular statute law, or is this just a general? I mean, has it been tested? Is this something that we went through in the Nixon administration, for example?
Yes. This is both Nixon and Clinton. Well, Clinton was actually impeached, and the Clinton allegation was obstruction of justice. In his case, it was telling a lie under oath about sexual contact, which from this vantage point in history seems tawdry and silly and probably was not impeachable.
Right.
The Nixon case is different. The Nixon obstruction of justice is ordering a superior to destroy evidence, the 18.5-minute gap in the tape. Obstruction of justice is typically destruction of evidence or intimidating a witness or, get this, firing a prosecutor, something that materially interferes with or delays or sidetracks an investigation. There are two other potential crimes. One, which does, the other two don't require success, that is, you don't actually have to obstruct. One is conspiracy to obstruct. So if he sat down with a lawyer or a PR flack and said, tell me how to talk to Jim Comey without getting myself in trouble, I want to convey to him the idea that he's got to leave Flynn alone, but I don't want to give him enough evidence to come after me. Mm-hmm. That would be a conspiracy to obstruct. That then requires a step in furtherance. The step in furtherance is the conversation with Comey and then the firing of Comey when he doesn't do what he's asked to do in the conversation.
Yes.
The last potential crime is attempted obstruction of justice, and that would be the conversation with Comey and then the firing when Comey doesn't do what he's asked to do. Is all of this impeachable? That's a political judgment. It is radical in American history to dislodge a popularly elected president. My gut feeling is no, this is not enough to get us there, but this will really gin up Democrats and some Republicans. I mean, one of your favorite Republicans, the senior senator from Arizona, has already said this is just like Watergate. Now, when he speaks, he usually has 2 or 3 other senators that follow along with him.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from that crowd yet.
You will, and probably Governor Kasich will join in that one as well.
Yeah, I believe he has, Brian.
Yes. That's what I've come to expect that from Governor Kasich, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, in a little tea leaf reading, this is going to be baggage that Trump's going to be carrying with him for a while, but ultimately you think it's going to fade away?
Well, that depends on what other shoes fall. These two things alone, I think, are just a pebble in his shoe. They're not a dagger in his heart.
Well, and especially in view of the Clinton conduct, you mentioned 3 specific emails at the same level of top secret SAP designation, and we didn't see anything happen with her.
Right. Well, she did not have the authority to declassify the way he does. So that's apples and oranges. I'm taking issue with a lot of my Fox colleagues on this. The president is a lot less culpable than Mrs. Clinton. She gets something that says top secret. She's stuck with it. He gets something that says top secret. He can tell Melania, Barron, or the Russian ambassador legally.
Fundamental distinction, Judge Anna Napolitano. Appreciate the legal explanation. Trump a little bit of hot water on that latter issue, but I think I'm with you. I don't believe it's going to ultimately go anywhere. But we're never, until 2018 in November, Judge Napolitano, I do not think we're going to have this relentless attack on Trump going to abate one iota.
I think you're right. I mean, the Democrats are determined to take one of the two houses. I mean, if Mrs. Pelosi were the speaker, I think it's pretty clear they would move to impeach him. But that's a huge leap for the Democrats to. I think they're about 30 seats behind in the House, so they got to make up those 30.
Well, they got to get their pound of
remember
flesh.
Those days, Speaker Pelosi, I never thought they'd be back.
Please don't suggest that they could be. Judge Anna Napolitano, love talking to you. Thanks on behalf of my listeners, and certainly looking forward to next Wednesday already.
All the best, Brian.
Take care, my friend. 841, 55 KRCD.